Legendary Canadian actor Christopher Plummer has died at the age of 91. Plummer grew up in Montreal and enjoyed a distinguished career in theater, movies, and television. He won an Oscar, 2 Emmys, and 2 Tonys.
Edelweiss, Edelweiss.
And the Oscar goes to Christopher Plummer, Beginners.
Sound of Music came out in 1965 and, of course, is considered to be a classic film. Plummer said over the years he hated the movie and found it awful and sentimental. In 2012, when he was 87, he became the oldest actor to win an Oscar for his role in Beginners, where he played a man who comes out as gay after the death of his wife. He died at his home in Connecticut of complications from a fall at the age of 91. Well, William Shatner is also a beloved Canadian actor and international star. He knew and worked with Christopher Plummer, and Mr. Shatner joins us now from Los Angeles. William Shatner, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Pleasure to be with you.
I think the first time I ever saw you work with Christopher Plummer was in Star Trek VI, where you played Captain Kirk, of course, and he played General Chang, the Klingon, Shakespeare-quoting Klingon with the eye patch riveted to his face. How did that come about, that you guys hooked up in a Star Trek movie?
I dimly remember his name being suggested for the role, and I jumped at the chance. We had our lives had intertwined most of our adult life. I from Montreal, as he is, and I played in several of the theaters that he played in. He was a couple of years, a little older than I was. Mm-hmm. And in those formative years, those earlier or later years were important in that I went to McGill and he was already a professional actor. So I was a while behind him, both on radio at the CBC out of Montreal, the Canadian Repertory Theatre in Ottawa, he went to, and I was there for several years. And then he had moved on to Toronto, as I did a few years later, and then on to Stratford, which I did a few years later. And then he, I believe, went to London and had a distinguished career on the West End. And I ended up in New York on Broadway. And then I continued on to Hollywood and made my life basically in Hollywood while he was traveling in between. We would see each other from time to time, and I had admired him from the very beginning. He had this elegance about him, the way he looked. He was this handsome, wonderful man with the great manners and the English accent and the clothing and everything. He just was, he was everything I wasn't. And at Stratford, he was admirable, and I was holding on to whatever I could hold on to. He was admirable, and I admired him so.
You were his understudy at one point. Is that not true? In a Shakespeare production,
he was played Henry V. He got sick, and I went on for one performance for Henry V without any rehearsal. So I went on in one of the longest roles in the English theater without any rehearsal. I didn't even know the other actors particularly, but I had, for reasons that I won't go into, had learned the words, and so I spoke the words and hardly knew the choreography. But we laughed about that over the years. The time I got to know him best of all, strangely, was I revisited Stratford. I was directing and acting in or being part of a documentary.
This is The Captains, right? About Star Trek.
That's correct. And so I asked to interview him, and he was at Stratford. I don't know whether he was living up there or not, but in any case, I visited with him for an afternoon. And we spent the most delightful afternoon talking and walking and being part of Stratford. I had been so in awe of everything. In the theater at Montreal, being at Stratford, I was like wide-eyed. And my eyes gradually closed through experience and age. And I was able to see with a little more reality what I was looking at. And so I was able to be with him on the same level, if you will.
Mhm.
I felt friendship rather than admiration, or both. And we played with each other on this interview. We laughed and joked, and it was so much fun, and all our mutual experiences, actors we had performed with, and jokes we had played on each other, and roles we had played, and the understudy thing, and the everything came together on that magical afternoon that I spent with him. And then
no, go ahead. Go ahead.
Sorry.
No, go ahead. Go ahead. I cut you off.
No, and then ellipse. Go ahead.
He acted right up. He was acting right up until the end, right? I mean, he was 91 when he passed. I saw a movie he did recently called Knives Out that came out 2 years ago. So he was like 88, 89 when he did this.
That's incredible to be acting at that age.
Right, like he did the stage, as you talked about, like Henry V did Shakespeare, but he also was a voice actor for video games, things like Skyrim and things on Xbox. Like he changed with the times, right? So
I hope so.
When you look at his legacy, big picture, and you know, there's a sense of loss and a sense of pride in this country today. How do you think Canadians and the world should remember Christopher Plummer when they look back at the totality?
As one of the most distinguished actors that ever that lived anywhere. He was more familiar in the theater in London, I believe, but as a result of his films and on television, he was the American public was well acquainted with him. But he was a formidable talent in many ways. He spoke, you know, we used to joke about John Gielgud and the way they would do Shakespeare, and Chris could do that without being putting it on like I do. He could do that in reality, and at the same time, he could play comedy extraordinarily well because he was very funny. He was a magnificent actor, and the parts that I knew of Chris Plummer were admirable. And I have a sense, I haven't seen him in many years, but I have a sense of loss. And it's one of those people, and I urge your audience to partake of my experience, which is don't let time go by. If you have an old friend or somebody who is passing you by and you wish to know them a little bit better, take advantage of the moment, because you never know when they'll pass on or you'll pass on. Take advantage of the moment. And I wish I had more often with Chris.
No, that is excellent advice, especially given the age we've been living in for the past year. Well, William Shatner, thank you so much for taking this moment to remember your friend and colleague with us here on Power and Politics. Thank you very much.
Pleasure to talk to you. Thank you.
That is William Shatner.
Hi, I'm Vassy Kapelos, host of Power in Politics. See more of our show by subscribing to the CBC News channel or click the link for another video.